Hello, YouTubers. This is me and Ricardo again. We're back in the game. We're here to continue developing end-to-end feature for deleting social media posts on a decentralized open source social media platform called Tarafu. And the last time, we did a little bit of pair programming. So Ricardo wrote a failing test for me, and I made it pass. And today is my turn to give you a failing test, and then you will make it pass. Just for the people that are not familiar with this pattern, this is what I call test-driven development with pair programming, pure pair programming. There's at least three different patterns mushed up together here. So there's pair programming, right? And there's pure pair programming where you just hit one commit at a time and then add on top of that test-driven development. So the pairs are actually passing back and forth tests, failing tests, instead of just someone sitting there watching, falling asleep, and the other one is doing all the work. So for the folks that, really want to see what that looks like, I now use my, our commits, Ricky, to basically show people how we do things. And for the people that have never seen this before, let me show you real quick what that looks like. So if you go up in here, literally, like if you go to Tarafu core, and if you go to, let's say, one of our merged pull requests, let's see here, where is one that you and I did? Not the controllers, but the foundations. And if you guys look at the commit history here, you'll see it, right? You'll see how this works. You basically do a failing test, someone makes it pass, and so on and so forth. There's this back and forth. Maybe we're kind of, getting a little easy here. Okay, I'm gonna give you a failing test, you make it pass, and I'll give you another failing test. But we're gonna switch that up real quick with this session here. See, even the history of how the code is being written is really, really, really important. Um, okay. Let me share up my screen here real quick. Let's go to Tarafu core. So now I owe you, sorry, Tarafu portal. I owe you a failing test, right? So
That's
whatever
correct.
ID is coming in, we need to validate the inputs and then do the processing and then handle the exceptions. Handling the exceptions is going to be very, very interesting because it's API exceptions, HTTP exceptions. You'll get to see that at a large scale. Okay, so let's go back to Tarafu portal here. And let's see. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go here and say, okay, you did the logic part. I'm gonna go down here and say, here's the validations part. So this is validation. So dot validations. So remove by ID validations. And then I want to write in here a failing test. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go here and say should throw validation exception on remove if ID is invalid and log it async. We're going to be using our new validation standard here in a second, where we can basically go and say, there is specific, but in order for that to happen, I need an exception class, right? I need a class where I can add this thing. So under models here, we have posts. Under post, I'm going to say, here's a new folder called exceptions. And I need two models. I need the invalid post exception. So let's go up in here and say invalid post exception. And this invalid post exception basically inherits something called exception. And then I'm gonna go here and say ctor, that's constructor. I'm not passing anything in, but the message here definitely says, message, right? Invalid post, correct the errors, and try again, right? So that's this guy. Now I want the other one here is to go and say, let's add in post validation exceptions. That's the categorization piece. So this is post validation exception. It's such a shame that StreamYard doesn't know how to pick the open dialogues. Teams does though. Teams is very good at that. It picks those real quick. Okay, so here's this guy, and then here's another CTOR, and I'm gonna go here and say exception, inner exception rather, right? And then here is a base message, right? Post validation Error occurred. Error occurred. Please try again. Okay, and this guy takes in that inner exception in here. So this is done. And now I have all the exceptions I need, right? Now I can go back to the unit tests and go and say, okay, given, when, then, like this. And then I'm going to go and say GUID invalid post ID, GUID.empty. So that's one. And then out of that, invalid post exception, like this. So this gives me new invalid post exception, like this. So that takes in nothing yet, but I'm going to go here and say invalid post exception dot add data. And this guy is going to take a key, which is name of what, Ricky? What do you think? Name of, post.id,
Post
right?
ID. Yeah.
Right. And values would be ID is required, something like that. And then in here, expected post validation exception, new post validation exception. And I'm passing in here invalid post exception. Okay, perfect. Now, here's a value task. Oop, value task. Someone asked me that question yesterday. When should I use value task versus using task? I said always use value task, whatever you can. Of course, XUnit is not there yet, but anyway, remove post by ID task equals this dot service dot remove post by ID invalid post ID. Perfect. And now I can go here and say await assert dot throws async. And this is post validation exception like this. And in here, I can go and say remove post by ID task as task. There you go. So this guy is done. And then I need my logging broker here. So verify broker dot delete post, I think. Oh, that's not the logging broker though. We need what? The API broker
The
first,
start
right?
the API broker. Yeah.
Okay, and this is delete post by ID. It is any, right? GUID. That never happened, right? So I was right. I need to do the logging broker first, but we can do this too. Times never. That's one. And then I can go here and say this dot logging broker mock verify, and that's my broker. Broker dot log error. And then I can go here and say it is same exception as expected expected post validation exception, right? I can go here and say times once. Okay, so that's this guy. Now let's see here. I don't have the same exception as, so I'm gonna do that real quick. But the logging broker happened first in this case, and then
Yeah.
the API broker would have happened, but it never happened. So that's this guy. Let's go back here and do this. What is this function? This is the function here that we need. So I'm gonna go here and say private static, right, expression
Yep.
of a func that takes in an
In
exception and returns a boolean, right? That's our
yep.
guy. And let's pull in all the big guns here, the expressions and all that, and then same exception as, and then takes in a expected exception in here. We're still within 120 characters, so we should be fine. And then return actual exception, where actual exception dot message equal expected exception dot message, and then also this one,
Actually, dot iter exception dot message.
message equal expected exception dot exception dot
Yep.
message, and then also we can do this little data validation, which is the most important one, where I can go here and say actual exception dot inner exception as exception, data equals expected exception dot inner exception dot data, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so we should be all good here. This is 111 characters, so we should be fine. And then this guy here is over here. This is a test. Let's go here and run this test real quick. How are you doing, Ricky? You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, let's see. So
Yeah.
this is here. So this is your failing test, right? It says I expected an exception and I got nada, right? So go
Yep.
ahead. You need to kind of clone the repo. I hope you did that,
Yeah.
for the, okay. And
I,
I'm gonna, go ahead. Uh,
no, I'm just saying that I did. I did everything.
Okay, go
Uh,
pull, yep, pull that branch. I'm here with you. Go for it. Now
all
it's
right.
all you, my friend. Pair programming is fun. Super fun.
Let me just share my screen. All right. So let me just run all the tests first. All right. Uh,
Here we go.
it's doing the. It already did the build, so it's starting to run the test now.
Okay.
Hopefully, it should speed up here. All right. It's taking its sweet time. There we go. All right. So, failure. No exception was thrown, so it's the correct exception here. So
Yep, that's the one. Yep.
just go to the code, and we're gonna have to go to post by AD async, and I forgot to do the control F12 this time. There
Yep.
we go. All right. So in
Mm.
this case, we're gonna need to make this curly braces this time,
Uh-huh.
and then I'll just move this up. All right. So seeing that we don't have what we normally have in other standards when we have that validate method, I would say go to the happy path first, but I don't know if that's if we can create the method right now, like the method that we use to already validate that exception.
So the first thing you want to do, so it depends on how you want to take it, but if you create that partial class for validations, feel free
Mm,
you start with that little, I call it the business rule engine method because it's basically takes in rules and it runs it like an engine. But you can start here with like validate post ID, for instance, right? And then go build that method later in the partial class.
okay.
Yeah,
So
take a shot at it. This is your time. Make it happen.
validate post. Right?
Mhm.
Um,
Validate post ID, right? Because we're not going to be
yeah,
validating anything. Yeah.
yeah. So I think we, but okay, but it's I still think we still need the post, right? Shouldn't we
No, no,
capture? No. Oh
no,
wait, right. We're not even. Well,
nope.
yeah, because
Just,
if we selected the post
yep.
and something happened to the
Unlike
idea,
unlike the one in storage, which is really specific and it wants to know that the post exists and all that kind of stuff, this one
yeah.
is much simpler than that. This one says, oh, just call it, and if you get a not found exception, we're done here because it does actually throw an exception.
So guessing we need a post service dot validation. Let's see. Yes. Let me just fix this for a moment and put partial here. All right. And then just take this guy. And then I would make a public static void post ID, which takes a GUID post ID. That's not the right one. All right. Add the then
Uh,
add the header and then spaces. All right. So, I mean, for simplicity's sake here, I'm guessing we just need to validate if it's empty or not, and just throw the exception that we need to throw. So
right. We need this validate engine kind of method. And feel free to kind of look at the previous one that we did together. We need that guy
mhm,
so we can pass in. So we need in here, you need two methods. In addition to this one, you need the validate, which takes in random bunch of rules and returns whatever rules it can process. And then the second one is
right,
yeah, the second one is the validate ID is invalid and you pass in the ID, right? Let's go to the let's go back to the core version of this and let's look at our code there. It's very identical. Let's go there.
right.
Mm.
Let me open up another instance.
Uh-huh.
Okay, alpha core. Okay, give me 1 second. It's opening up the solution here. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still loading. Yeah, give me a second here. All right. Okay. Look for the
Let,
method
let,
here.
let, let, let's start this together. Let's do it this way. Let's create a new method and let's call it is invalid. Let's say public, do a private, private static dynamic, and let's just say is invalid,
Okay.
right? And this is invalid guy takes in a GUID, right, as input param. So we want to pass in that thing that we want to validate, right? Let's call it an ID. Okay. Now, since this guy is returning a dynamic, we need to actually return a dynamic object. So after the closing parentheses, do a fat arrow and type new. No, no, new right next to the fat arrow. I'm okay with that.
Um,
Mm.
okay.
Yep.
All
This
right.
basically is saying I'm creating a new dynamic object, right? Now, this dynamic object needs to have two things in order for it to succeed. Number one, it needs condition, and the second one, it needs a message. The condition tells us whether it has passed or not. So let's type this inside these two squiggly brackets. Condition, let's do that as a property. Condition. And this condition, you can say equal and then ID equal GUID.empty. Since this ID is an input parameter, we need that I to be lowercase, right?
Um, you need this ID?
Yeah, this I needs to be lowercase because it's input parameter, right? It's not a
Right.
property.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's that one. And then in the message, we're just gonna say ID is required. That's it, right? And then semicolon after the closing parentheses, right? Okay, so this is one. That's just a rule, right? That rule need to be fed to some rules engine, right?
Yeah.
Let's build the rules engine. So let's go down there for one, and let's do, private, static, void, validate. And
This
inside
is
that guy,
where
yeah,
this is where it takes the params.
yep, go for it. If you
Yeah.
can do it, go for it.
I believe it was something like a
Dynamic
dynamic.
rule,
Yeah.
uppercase rule.
Uppercases.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because it's like a type, right? And then a comma and then a string parameter, right? You can zoom out a little bit since you're running out of
Yeah.
real estate. Let's make parameter also uppercase P. And now you need like a representation of an array and then a variable name that's called validations. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we just need to create this bucket, this exception, and every time the rule condition is satisfied, right, we're gonna go and add the parameter with the message in that. So let's start like this. Let's say var invalid post exception. Post exception.
Yep. And I guess we would need to categorize this.
Yeah, so let's iterate. Not yet. We're not gonna categorize yet. We're still building the exception case, right? Um,
Right.
let's let's iterate for every single validation in here and make sure whether the rule is satisfied or not so we can add the message. You know what I mean? So let's do this.
Uh,
Let's just start like this. Do for each. Do a for each. So minimize your solution side. Just minimize that guy and zoom in so people can see this part. Yep, yep, yep. Okay. So var, and then in here we're gonna say instead of var, just open close parentheses and do this. Do dynamic rule and string parameter. This time it's lowercase actually. And then string parameter. This
okay.
is this is we're iterating inside these validations, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now
Right.
we want
Yeah.
to, right? And then we want to
Yeah.
go and say if rule dot condition is true, right? Mhm. Yep. If this is satisfied, you don't have to do that. We just say, you know,
Oh. Right. Yeah.
yep. And then we go and say in here the if that's true, then invalid post exception dot upsert list, and then you pass in the parameter and the message. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
So
it
take a
would
new
be
line, one for the key, one for the value, and then you just want to go and say, um, so for the key, it's just the parameter. There it is.
yeah. Yeah.
And then for the value, you want to just do rule.message.
Right. Because it's already in the dynamic itself. Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, if this condition of this exception actually has more than one error or more than zero errors, or at least one error, we need to throw the exception. So outside of that for each loop, just do this. Invalid post exception, throw if contains errors. There it is. Done. Okay. Now, we built the business rules engine and we built the condition. Now we need to pass the condition to the business rules engine. So let's scroll up a little bit into this validate post ID and let's do just that.
So it would be
Mhm.
validate,
Uh-huh.
and then I would have to pass
A
uh,
tuple. Mhm.
Yeah, which would be the is invalid, right? So
Mhm.
post
Mhm.
and then uh
The parameter, right? So name of
oh right, name of, and then it would
post
be post
dot ID.
dot ID.
Now you want to give these guys a name, right? So behind the is invalid, after you're done with this one, it's just post.id, and then behind the is invalid, you want to say rule, and behind name of, you want to say parameter. Mm,
Okay, yeah. And I should do. Is this okay? Right.
that's perfect. Yep.
Let's see.
You'll
There
just
you go.
need a and no, for this case, just keep it on the same line. It's not really that long. Otherwise, there's a way to break it. So, okay, so take a space there, do Control KD, it'll fix the spacing. Okay, so that's the part where you're throwing this invalid post exception, right? Now, let's go and handle the situation where that invalid post exception is thrown so we can categorize it. That's the second part of this. So let's go create that partial class for exceptions, and let's see what we're
So,
gonna do about it. Go ahead.
all right. So post serves exception. One second. I think I might have missed something here. Ah, yeah. .cs. Let me just fix something for validation as well. You seem to keep forgetting to pluralize these classes. All right. This. All right, and then make this partial. All right. Still.
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. So I'm guessing this is where we're gonna create the function for the try catch, right?
Yep, so let's go here and do the delegate piece. Do you remember how we create, like, let's do create a delegate.
So I
Um,
think it was private delegate, right? And um, to the name. What will be the proper name for this?
yeah, so let's go. What does this function return? You know,
Uh,
so what do we return from the function? So if you go into that happy path, um, what does our remove by ID function return?
oh, it will return a post.
A value task of a post, right?
Well, yeah.
Let's do that. So value task post. Uh-huh.
All right. Post. Just like that. Second. So the returning post function. And then let's see. If I'm not mistaken, for the try catch method would
Right.
be
Yep, exactly the same. It returns, so this is private async and then value
and
task.
values out. Yep.
Hmm. There you go.
Same
Keep
thing.
going.
So it
Hmm.
returns a post and
But it's called try catch, exactly. Hmm.
yeah. And this is
It takes
getting
that
a
delegate as a
delegate.
parameter. Yep, exactly. It's a function that takes a function, basically.
Yeah. I hope the name is right. Function. No, it would be like returning post function. So let me just
Yep, yep.
do this. Put it
If
here.
it goes over 120, we need to break it a little bit, but otherwise, I think we should be fine.
Oh, what happened here? Oh. Went a little farther.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Uh-huh.
92. All right. So I'm guessing going so the traditional try catch here.
Yep, yep. Now this is the time where we abstract that guy. That's right.
Yeah. So normally we just return whatever is that is throwing in. I mean, for the function here, right? So it would be await, returning post function, which would be anything that's happening inside of that. All right. And in this case, it would be the localized invalid post exception, invalid post exception. All right. I hope I'm doing this right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're doing this exactly right. Now we need a method to kind of take that inner exception,
Yeah.
and wrap it up in a categorical exception.
All right. So let me just put it here. Create and log. It would be right. It would be validation exception.
Uh-huh.
Exception, and it would get the localized one, so it would be valid post exception.
That's right.
Just create the method
Look at you. You're going.
somehow.
Uh,
Okay. Uh,
So we're returning a post validation exception, but we're taking in an exception with the X as input, right?
yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you. In this
Mhm.
case, it would be yeah.
No, no, no. We're
No.
returning a post validation exception, but we're taking in as input parameter exception, right? So the return type is post validation exception, right?
Oh, well, my bad. My bad. Yeah. 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 You're right. Right, because how I'm going to categorize it makes sense.
Hmm.
So let's just see here. Post exception.
Hmm.
I guess I was just um, post validation exception. So I'm just going to categorize it right now. So
Yep, yep,
actually, I'm
yep.
just doing it like new post validation exception, and I get the invalid post exception.
Okay.
And then um, yeah, we're gonna log. So I'm guessing, do we have a log broker here?
We should. If you just go and say
Yeah,
this dot logging broker,
yeah,
it's already
yeah.
there, but it's on the root class. Yep.
Right,
Node one.
right. So it's just a log error and
Hmm.
post validation exception.
That's right.
And I'll
Hmm.
just throw the post validation exception.
You need to return it instead of throwing it. The
Oh,
throwing will happen above.
right, right.
Yep, that should do
Little.
the trick. Make sure you wrap up your main function with a try catch.
Oh, right. I'm talking about this one.
Yeah, not this one, the other one.
Oh, post service. Right.
Yeah, this guy.
So try catch.
Hmm.
Just surround that guy with this, and it would get, let me just remove these guys, a little fix up here, it would get a function,
Okay.
right?
You still need the squigglies, right?
Yep, you're right.
And then you need a sync behind that.
Yeah.
And you don't need the other async anymore. You just need a fat arrow next to the closing parenthesis on the input parameter for post ID. Yeah, that should do the trick, I think.
And I think I can,
Hmm? No, no, you
wait,
still need the fat arrow, and
okay.
then dock that, closing opening parenthesis squiggly down by
Oh,
one.
let's, let's place it. Yeah.
No, no. No, no, no. You were doing it right.
Mhm.
Yep. And then push that squiggly down by one. The squiggly bracket, the open one. Push it down by one. Okay. And then let's see why this guy is complaining. If you hover over that open, that guy says, not all code path. Yeah, you need to just say return await. Return await.
Uh, where would I do that in this case? Here?
Line 32, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Control KD to fix the world.
So,
Nope, nope, still not good. Okay, now let's run your test and let's see.
oh boy, not nervous at all.
Ah, it's gonna be fine. All right. Here we go. Done.
All right.
Okay, so all you gotta do is just commit, just make a commit, that this test has passed, right? And then tomorrow we start handling exceptions that are coming from the API. How many exceptions did the API throw? A whole bunch, right? There is a bunch that are critical, like unauthorized. There's a bunch that are less critical, like system service response exception, and there are ones that are very specific to a dependency validation exception. I'm excited to go with this with you because I have never really published that. Like it exists in some internal projects, but I've never really publicly spoke about, propagating the validation issues all the way upstream. In this case, I guess it will be much easier because you only have one property and one property only. We'll talk a little bit about, toast, how you pop up a toast error message versus
Uh,
having a validation message. There's so many different things. I can't wait to show you, my friend. But that should wrap it up for today. Any questions? Do you have any thoughts, anything at all for me about this part?
uh, so far, it's pretty straightforward. It's just, I just, like I said yesterday, I have to just keep practicing with this.
Yep,
Yeah.
keep going with these open source projects, and eventually, at some point in time, you won't even be thinking about it. The whole idea here is to give you see, when we standardize software, the most important piece about this is to basically give you a block of code that you can remember and you can kind of shuffle around so you can deliver value, right? And then we can work on these blocks, later and say, okay, we can do this better, we can optimize this, or at least there's a framework or a standard that
Yeah.
handles these issues. Anyway, my friend, it's been really fun talking to you today, Ricardo, as usual, and let's continue our journey tomorrow. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. And you guys watching us again, feel free to drop any comments in the comment section if you have any questions or concerns. And as usual, don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank you for 5,000 subscribers. We made it, Ricky. Yay.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Here's for another 5,000, let's do it. All
Yeah.
right. I'll talk to you later, man. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.